What do we read in Surah An-Nisa? In Surah An-Nisa, ayah, I believe, number 4 or 5, it talks about yatama. Okay? وَابْتَلُوا الْيَتَامَى. وَابْتَلُوا الْيَتَامَى. Yani, keep testing them. Are they mature enough now? Test them. وَابْتَلُوا. Don't just say, okay, you are 18 now, we're going to give you your money. Test them. If they demonstrate maturity, give them their money. If that young man demonstrates deen and akhlaq, now we agree. Now what about young women? There are 4 criteria. So, girls, remember, mothers, fathers, remember, you have to participate. You have to look for deen and akhlaq. Now, young men, listen to me. Sit properly and listen to me. Sit properly and listen to me. Now, when you want to go and have your parents, what do you mean have my parents? Now you're talking about men. Can't men do it alone? What's the difference? What's the difference? We always would like, we would like that. We would like to be a family affair, because imagine if the entire family made the choice. Marriage will be a happy place to be, because the 2 families would love each other. Now, the norm, let me say it, families of the husband, they can't stand each other. And I know many couples that are living, they continue to live. But she doesn't go to his parents' house, he doesn't go to her parents' house. Right? They can't stand each other because they didn't spend the time to know one another. To know one another. Okay? You really need to establish. That is why the first ayah of Surah An-Nisa, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ وَالْأَرْحَامِ. وَالْأَرْحَامِ. What's arham? Salat al-Rahim. Extended relationships. Norms here, and again, I'm not criticizing cultures. I am not. But in this culture we are living in, he picks her, she picks him, they establish a family. The parents don't have to play any role in this. If they don't like each other, it's too bad. We would have liked you to be part of the arrangement, but since it didn't work out, it's okay. In our culture, this doesn't happen. It's a necessity because of our makeup. Now for girls, you may look for 4 things. You may look for attributes, personality, skills, all of that put together under one title, lima laha. It's not lima liha, lima laha. For what she has of attributes, skills. She's a great cook, and I love to eat. Anything wrong with that? No, nothing wrong with that. Don't overeat, but I enjoy. There are certain people who can detect how much olive oil is placed in the salad, or whether this olive oil or it's canola oil, or they can tell. See, quite often my wife says, do you like this, spice or that? I said, I don't know if, I can't tell the difference. I just sit and eat.
Which is really good.
You can't tell, or you don't want to tell?
Your husband didn't appreciate that. He really did not appreciate that. And I didn't say anything. Did I say anything? No comment. No comment. Okay. See, the biryani that you cook is too oily. Okay. Now, number 2, her looks, her beauty. Nothing wrong with that. We didn't say handsomeness in the man. No. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did, because we know, and this is another thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave muscles to men and gave beauty to women. Men, if you want to insult a man, you go and tell him, "You are beautiful, Luqman." He didn't like it. Okay? But if I go to Luqman and say, "Luqman, I like your muscles." "Thanks, man." Beauty is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala endowed women with. And beauty, did anybody say physical beauty? No. And last time I used an example that people say, "But this is an Islamic presentation, please don't mention." No. So that we understand. In the Miss Universe pageant and pageant or pageant? Pageant? Not pigeon. Pageant? Okay. Now in those competitions for beauty, they used to look at the shape, the looks, but then they started to change. And they started to look at personality and intelligence and as part of the beauty. But women, you may look at the beauty of the woman. So it is skills, attributes, beauty. Number 3, family. Because whether we like it or not, when we say family, we say mother. We say mother. Because if you look at the mother, okay, you may, not you can, or you may see how your wife to be will be in 30 years from now, or whatever you may. There is a very slang, I know Basir Abdullah alayhi lano, he knows it. Okay, there is a slang saying in Arabic, okay, Mayala بتضحك لأنه she knew it, okay. طب الجرة على تمة تطلع البنت لأمه. Okay. It says, bring the jar and put it upside down. I don't know what's the relationship. Then the girl will take after her mother. He didn't like it. Okay, but this is the truth. This is the truth. Now, it doesn't work all the time. If it works all the time, it's a disaster. It may be a disaster. I'm not saying it's a disaster. It doesn't work all the time, but it's a good measuring stick. It's a good thing to look at. So look for that. Look for the family the girl is coming from, and finally look for her deen. So how many criteria did Rasulullah ﷺ present that are common between men and women? What's the criteria that is common? Actually, look at this. Even though the word akhlaq was not mentioned with the girl, but all 3 attributes in the beginning were expanded for the girl, but not for the man. So in other ways, the girl criteria are exactly like the man's criteria, but expanded. But the boy's criteria are not necessarily. You see, it did not say skills about the man, because if he is a good welder, Jihan is not interested in Abdul Salam being a good welder. So what if he's a good welder? But that's an attribute. Or a hunter. Yes. I hope you will not be interested in that. We don't want him to be a hunter at home.
about family comparability.
Yeah.
Now, we mentioned the basic, and we said that it all expanded now. The three that we mentioned, lima laha, her attribute, her skills. Now we come to her beauty. The man, may not be so beautiful, but now we come to the family. Now this is a component that is for men and for women. So that's why the expansion now makes sense to us. These are the basics. Now, if we want to take the extras, the secondary, age, compatibility, wealth, certain field of professions. Recently, I tell you what, please, when I mention examples, I don't want to, because I tell you something. Recently, I was helping in a domestic dispute, and the families were not happy, or one of the families, the two families, were not happy that at one time I gave a khutbah and they took it as being directed at their example of that dispute. When I give a khutbah or a speech or anything, I may be building that from previous, because I have to be practical, but I do not point fingers at anybody. All of you are, I consider you part of you are my family. So I cannot, I shouldn't, I don't, point fingers at anyone. So I was recently asked, a medical doctor met a medical doctor and he wanted to explore marriage. You know what my response was? I said, I asked him about the attributes. Some of them were present, others were not present. Then I said, you know what? My humble opinion is that because the other attributes are not all satisfied, you may not have a settled marriage, because when you have two doctors at home, each one of them has a very busy schedule outside the house. Both of them come home, medicine is in their head, and they cannot talk about anything but medicine. Or I said, in that particular example, I don't encourage you. But if all the basic criteria are met, then it may really dilute the difficulties that the secondary attributes may present. We have to be careful. That's why if we always go back to the basic attributes and go from there, this is a beautiful rule. Look at the basics. Are they satisfied? Then the others can be dealt with. If they are not, sooner or later, I can tell you, a problem or problems may pop up here and there and there. So we have to be very careful. Let me talk about age. Now, age, you will say, what do you have to talk about age? Look at Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He married a very old woman, Sauda bint Zam'a. He married a woman 15 years senior to him. He married a young girl who is about 40 years younger. By the way, next week, inshallah, I will share with you the historical evidence that Aisha was almost 18 years old when Prophet Muhammad ﷺ married her. The hadith in Al-Bukhari, related to Aisha herself, that she was 6 years old when she was engaged to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and 9 years old when he really consummated the marriage and things, is really examined through historical spectacles and there is evidence historically that this might not have been the case. And many people who really try, and they try hard, to take things from the seerah in order to target the integrity and the authenticity and of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, will really take these ahadith or these pieces of seerah and say, this is what we have. I will share with you next week the historical evidence, and I say, whether the historical evidence is right or wrong, we know that had it been a practice by Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that would raise the eyebrows of the non-believers or the Meccan society or the Medinat society, rest assured that they would have used his marriage to Aisha as a prime reason to attack. They were looking for things to attack. And they would have used it all the time. But we know, it's a fact, that none of them talked about it. None of them. Because there wasn't anything wrong with it. But we are saying that even Bukhari himself, he says not almost 6,500 ahadith that are mentioned in my collection of authentic ahadith, not all of them are necessarily uttered by Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. We have to know that. There are many people, when you talk with them, but this is in Bukhari. This is in Muslim. Now, I am not, you see, some who have shaky hearts will say, you know what Munir El-Kassem said? He does not trust Bukhari and Muslim. Did I say that? No, I didn't. I didn't. But let us as Muslims, rise above simplistic dealings with issues. We are saying Bukhari told us in his introduction that before I started to compile in my collection, I put to myself a set of criteria that every hadith I will include in my collection should satisfy all the criteria. And if a hadith satisfied it because it was on his list, he put it. So, most probably, that the majority of the hadith were uttered by Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, but it is not 100%. It is not. So when it comes to age, we cannot say that whatever is acceptable in Saudi Arabia should be used in Canada. Whatever was done in the 7th century AD should be done in the 21st century, because age is not a basic criterion. Now let us now look at this. Age is a secondary criterion. And secondary criteria, please let us now, it's good to have specific things to go by. Okay, now basic, we satisfy that. Now how do we look at secondary criteria? We say secondary criteria are time and place sensitive. Which means a secondary criterion that is acceptable in Saudi Arabia may not be acceptable in Canada at the same time in the 21st century. And a secondary criterion that was acceptable in the 7th century may not be acceptable in the 21st century. It is secondary, it's not basic. Basic criteria are the same and they are immutable, they do not change. We cannot say in the 21st century, we cannot look at deen, man. Deen is not, no, it's basic. And it is not time and place sensitive. Akhlaq are basic. They are not time and place sensitive. They are immutable. They are fixed. Whether you are living in Medina or Mecca or in London, Ontario. However, age, when I was doing Umrah last time, we visited with a man in Ta'if He was 76 years old. His last wife is 17 years old. And the women who were with us, they were sitting with her. That 17 years old was happy and laughing and if we look at it here, I mean, it's a crime.
They're going to look at it this way.
It's a crime.
And this is against Islam, for sure. They're going to take it as a target for...
Thank you. Thank you. Now, this is how we look at things now. This is how we look at things.
Yeah, but look at Larry King.
But yes, yeah, but now, look at this. Look at this.
Michael Douglas.
Look at this, Brother Naeem. Didn't you make this comment with an innate feeling that, what has he done? You gave it as an example of being something strange,
Yes.
right? Because the norm goes against it. Let us look at the level of education. Look at the level of education. Now, if there is a big gap in the level of education, especially if that level of education is reflected in the intellectual ability, they sit together. She may want to talk about the last statistics that were on television yesterday, and he is a high school dropout, but they got married because of secondary qualities, because he's handsome, because he comes from a wealthy family, they are living in a mansion, but she is much more educated than him, and now she wants to talk about something in common. He can communicate. He can't communicate. With time, she may grow, but look at this. If now she may use some of the secondary qualities without him being part of it, she can use the BMW and the mansion and the trips to, Cancun, and without him being part of it, she is living her own life. So her level of education can be satisfied without him being part of it. But is this a family life? Is this Now, this family may continue up to a certain point or may continue forever, but it is an artificial structure. It is not right. It's wrong. So the level of education has to be, compatible between both of them. However, let me mention this, not because I really think that this is how it should be. Believe me, I'm finding it even difficult to express what I want to say, but I am now bringing practice to the forefront. I say, because of the age difference that we look at, there is a big possibility that the man could have had more chance to get a higher level of education, while the woman, because she got married younger, might not have been able to reach the same level of education. So on a practical scope, we usually find the man to have a higher level of education, and they are still fine as long as they have something exciting and interesting to talk about. And let me mention this here. When I talk about education, I mean education, because there are many people who have PhDs, but they are uneducated. They are not educated. There are many people who have bachelors, who have masters, who have, they are not educated. They are people who got the information, but they were unable to process that information and transform it into knowledge, to become really educated. And there are people I may be wrong, but my father was one of them, and I believe it. He did not go past grade 3. When he sits and talks to me, I still look at him as a very educated person, without a degree. Without a degree. So let us now be certain that when we talk about education, we are talking about intellectual ability. The ability to look at life and process life experiences properly. And Dr. Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, did not have a PhD. Dr. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Dr. Umar ibn al-Khattab, those people never had PhDs. Those people were able to digest this into something that a PhD does not give you. And because of that, when we say level of education, I tell you, there is that kind of education that now, with the presence of YouTube and you have to be careful, by the way, because sometimes they can be fabricated things. And there are times that you need to get the evidence, and there are people who have memorized the Quran, who have known the Quran, and they did not really get a degree from Al-Azhar or from Medina or from. So education, and I know that those who are going to listen to me and say, what is he claiming? I'm not claiming. I am talking out of experience, seeing people and dealing with people, that there are many people who are highly educated, but they do not have a degree. They don't have a degree. So I would say compatibility in education is important as a secondary criterion. I will say that, racial compatibility is something very difficult, and it is not for everybody. There are people from two different racial backgrounds who can be married and have a beautiful life together because of themselves. They are able, they are strong. And there are people who get into such marriages and things do not work because they are unable to maneuver through the cultural and racial differences. And it could be that because the basic criteria are satisfied and many other secondary things are in common, then the racial secondary differences may not be as powerful. Because look at this, if you have so many secondary criteria as well as the basic criteria under your, what you say, on your shoulder, whatever you say, then it will really dilute the effects of the racial differences. If you have lots to build on, then the racial differences will not. But if racial differences will present themselves, for example, and we have to understand, even though Islam does not recognize racial differences, but I'm talking about marriage, from a practical standpoint, had Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam recognized that race should not be an issue, he would have mentioned it in the ahadith. He didn't. He did not. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam married an Egyptian Copt from a different culture, different everything. It was fine. That was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But there are people who may, let's say, a Lebanese marrying a Turkish, or a Pakistani marrying a Bosnian, or an Arab, or it may, if there are so many other secondary things to build on, but I've seen that in many instances, you've got to really do your homework properly and see basics are satisfied, and how much other secondary qualities you can collect before you are comfortable to eliminate the racial differences as a problem, as a potential problem in the marriage. So I hope I explained it carefully, that interracial marriages, and that goes also for intercultural. When I say intercultural, it became actually, if you consider Lebanon, for example, if you are from Qur'an and Nukha, it is intercultural. And these are two villages that are about 20 kilometers apart. Okay? But it could be a major problem. We have to be careful. Basic, I keep referring to that. Satisfy the basic and you will never lose. Then look at the second, and you know what? You know what? When someone presents to your family, after you are courteous and you welcome them and they have their coffee and then they leave, start to make a list. What do we have in common? And call and ask, invite, keep asking, and then look at the list. Do we have a lot? Oh, but he, really, the only negative thing about